Hi folks, and welcome back to my YouTube channel, and this is part number 2. In part number 1 we removed the engine from old Rusty. We took apart the engine to some extent. We removed the fuel pump, the distributor, the water pump, and we also took off the cylinder head, and we found out that one of the cylinders actually had a hole inside the piston. And now we're going to continue by taking the engine further apart. We're going to take off the distribution cover, we're going to check the distribution belt, we're going to take out the crankcase, and we look at the crankshaft, and then we'll push out these liners because that's going to be really necessary. So that's going to be the first thing we have to do. We have to get this pulley off, and that's a big bolt, so hopefully I can get it off. It's going to take some force to get it off. Then we'll take off the distribution chain cover with all these bolts, and in fact this is still a chain, which is quite different than today's cars, which are all with belts. And the good thing about a chain is you typically never have to change it. Now once we got that off, then we'll flip the engine over and we take off the crankcase, and then we'll look at the crankshaft and we try the big ends, and then we're going to knock out these liners. So let's get on with it. The first thing we got to do now is to take this pulley off before we can remove the distribution chain cover. And that's a big bolt, and I had to get a special key for that because I didn't have a socket that actually fits. This is a socket metric 46, so that's pretty big. So let's see if we can get it on. Yeah, that fits nice. So let's try, and if I'm getting lucky, I'm going to get it off. If I'm unlucky, well, then the engine probably will rotate and I will have to block the engine in one way or another. So let me try. I don't think this is going to work like this. Oh, well, it does. Can hardly believe that this is so easy to get off. Wow. See this? That's play on the crankshaft. That's not very good. So let's see if we can get the pulley off. And I'm going to use a hammer. I should use a soft hammer, but I'm going to knock it very gently. Not too hard. And it's already coming off. All right, there we go. Normally that shouldn't be that hard, unless they glued it on there, because sometimes people do weird things with engines. There we go. So here it is, the distribution chain. I think this is really loose. This probably needs to be tightened up. I probably will put a new one up. The sprockets are looking quite all right. So the crankshaft drives actually with the distribution chain the camshaft, and the camshaft by itself is then pushing up the push rods, and this is a push rod, so that's sitting on top of it, and then it gets pushed up. This is how that works, and timing is very critical, because on the same camshaft you also have your distributor fitted, so you got to make sure that when you put an engine back together that you got all the timing absolutely right. And I haven't paid attention to any timing marks so far because I can't see any, but once it's all cleaned up I might see some. In each case, this timing belt is way too loose, if you ask me. This is not good. In fact, if you look inside the cover that I took off, I don't know if you can see it, but there's wear and tear. Actually, metal parts are being cut off because the chain was rubbing on it, so that is not very good. So that is certainly something we need to fix. And I have my favorite tool, as you guys already know by now. So now let's remove the nut on the camshaft, and that's sometimes a bit hard, but with a pneumatic tool that always works quite well. There we go. So to get the chain off, you have to remove the bottom sprocket and the top sprocket at the same time. So the top sprocket is the one that fits on the camshaft, and I need to have a pulley puller on that one because otherwise I can't get it off. The bottom one is easier, so I'm going to slide off that part already. Now, I already had removed this little notch, so that's sitting on the bottom to keep things in place. And now I will have to slide the back one together with the top one parallel, and that's the way to do it. Otherwise you can't get it out. Slide a bit on both sides. This was very narrow, this guy. There we go. So now I should be able to, just to pull it off. There we go. And this one. So now let's try to remove the camshaft. It's held in place with those two locking bolts, but I also have to remove the oil pump and some other components because all that is driven by the camshaft. So folks, before I turn over the engine to look at the crankshaft, I have to remove the push rods. Now, it's always good practice to store them in the way they were fitted in the engine because they have developed wear and tear, and you want to keep that all in the same place, unless you replace everything with new. So that's why I typically use a card box, and I punch some holes in it, and then number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and that's where I'm going to stick them in. So I take the first one out. Now, number 1, I called it always the one near to the radiator. That's for me is always number 1. Number 2, and just stick them in like this so you can't really miss it. Position. Now, there's also a very simple test for push rods, but I'll show you that later to see if they are still straight, because they've got to be straight. And all you need to do is roll them like this on a flat surface. And then you should not feel any movement, so they should roll very nicely. If they go up and down, then they're crooked and you should replace them. But all these, they look quite good. All right, so we're about ready to turn over the engine. You're probably going to have some shit coming out of it, so I better place something on the floor. So let's see if we can turn the engine over. I have a bolt that sits in the way. There we go. Now you see why I placed the cloth underneath, because you got oil dripping out all over the engine block. All right, folks, we're going to remove the crankcase so we can actually see what happens with the crankshaft. That's a whole bunch of bolts I have to undo, but hopefully it's going to go quite well. You guys ready to see what this will bring? Oops. That's a whole bunch of bolts. So let's see what it will bring us. I need to prime it off a bit, because after all those years, it is really stuck, isn't it? Should be good enough. This is the oil filter, and it's all clogged up, as you can see. This is the oil pump, and I'm going to remove this now first of all, so we have a bit of a better look inside. And that's the carter, and you can see what kind of sticky stuff is inside. And it's really thick as well. It's like a thick coat of tar. I don't know if you can see it, how thick it is. To get the fuel pump out, you need to undo a bolt on the side and then actually knock it out. It's a bit tough, but it's going. Intact. If you need to remove this little gear, then you need to knock out these little pins, but we'll do all that later. As soon as the oil pump is removed, you can remove the camshaft, and you need to undo those two bolts, and then you can actually pull it out gently. Here we go. It's not very hard. Here we go. You may have to play a bit with it, because sometimes it gets caught. There we go. That feels very smooth. Alright, so we're going to remove now the big ends, so the pistons. And that's those 4. So I'm going to mark them. So number 1, 2, 4. Now those are going to be the first cylinder, the second, the third, and the fourth. And again, I have to undo these nuts, but they're held in place by a little metal plate. So I need to knock that out. There we go. And that's what we need to do on all 4 of them. I guess I had a bit too much paint on this one. Alright, so we're going to remove the big ends of cylinder number 4 and see how easy that will be, or how hard it will be. That was a bit more tough. Even that little metal plate is hard to get off. Alright. So these are the inner bronze bearings, and they don't feel right. Not good. And the crankshaft is pretty much damaged as well, so that is really not good. Let's get this off. Now I normally gently knock, or do it with a piece of wood. But this is a bit more difficult here because the pistons are stuck. So all right, let's look. That's better, but you can see all the scratches on the crankshaft. Doesn't work. Let's try this one. Well, that's a good one. So we got this. The only one I can't get out right now is this one. That's a tough one. It comes out. Here we go. What I've seen is that I have grooves, severely grooves and scratches on the crankshaft. Look at that area. Same thing here and over there. So the whole crankshaft will have to be reworked. That's for sure. Now let's see how I can get the crankshaft out, and then we can take the pistons out. Now taking the crankshaft out is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 bolts that I have to undo, and then it should be coming out. By the way, these blocks here, these are counterweights. So now we should be able to lift those bearings. There we go. And again, you got these shells inside. That doesn't look too bad, but yeah, it's scratched as well. So I think the whole engine is scratched, so I'm going to get it reworked. So this is what we call a bronze bearing, a gliding bearing, and you can get it replaced. You can get an oversized bearing if you want, depending if you have to grind down the crank shaft or not. So you always have to make sure you have the right dimensions. But I'm going to give this to a machine shop because I don't have the right tools for this. So I have to remove this oil pipe. I couldn't get it to it before because the counterbalance of the crankshaft were in the way, but now I can. I'm just going to put it aside. There we go, and that's the crankshaft. Let me put it aside. And here's the block. We've got the 4 pistons. I think 2 of them I can move. This one I cannot move, or just a little bit. This one is stuck, and that one is movable. So I guess this one I might be able to pull out. Here we go. So here's the piston, and that's the one with the big damage on. See? Here. This is really bad. It's been blown through. It's gone. And the sides are really, really badly damaged. So that is certainly a replacement for sure. All right. Let's see if we can get another one out. And maybe we can get the first one out. Yep. Now that one, it looks better. But still, if you have one bad one, you have to replace them all. It has some scratches as well. So, and we know as well that the cylinders were actually corroded. So that's got to go. Oh, that one came out. This one is totally rusted and got stuck in it. So you see all the rust on it. So that's good. And the last one is the toughest one, isn't it? I can't get him out. So I guess I will turn the block around and then try to get it out from the other side. So we couldn't get this piston out, so let's see if we can knock it out. That should normally work. You might see it coming out. It's a tough one. And it's out. So these are the 4 pistons. 2 of them were really badly rusted in, and you can see that on the red areas. It's really bad. And one of them had actually damage on the side and was blown through. So that means we're going to have to get 4 new pistons. And this, guys, is a liner that I just knocked out of the engine block. Let's do another one. In the beginning, I'm pretty rough with it. But as you can tell, both start to go rather quickly. There we go, that's out. That's one. And now we still have 1 more to go. And that's it. It came out. Here it is. The last 2. But I will place my crankshaft back in so I keep all the parts together. Alright guys, this is it for this video. You've seen how we stripped the block apart and how we made it ready to go to the machine shop. The main block, I'm going to get the crankshaft grinded, I'm going to get the camshaft grinded, all balanced out with new bearings, both the big bearings for the actual crankshaft, but also the bearings for the big ends of the pistons. I'm going to get new pistons, I'm going to get new wet liners. and then the block is going to be as good as new, and then we can put it all back together. I might have a new oil pump. I probably will do that if I can find one. And then I have another job to be done, which is actually fixing the cylinder head. We're going to clean that, and that's going to be for another video, because that will be another repair we're going to do. So once the head is finished, once the engine block is finished, then we will put it all back together, and hopefully we will have a running engine. Thank you for viewing, and please, if you know of any tips or any parts or a good store where I can buy new parts for this type of an engine, it's a Citroen CV11, so please let me know, because I'm always interested in it. So thank you for viewing, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye bye.